Welcome to the Fleet Legends interview series. We all know the fleet management industry is always evolving, but one constant remains: the immense value of wisdom gained through decades of experience. The Fleet Legends interview series, sponsored by Legend Fleet, captures and shares the expertise of seasoned fleet managers, industry pioneers, and dedicated leaders who've shaped the field over decades of dedication.
Creating a better day for the legends of the road with the non-slip van floors, protective interior liners, and full range of work van accessories. Trusted by major OEMs and fleets all across North America and Europe.
Their stories preserve fleet wisdom, offering actionable advice, practical insights, and historical context for today's leaders and tomorrow's innovators. As Vice President of Content for Bobit, I'm Lauren Fletcher, and I'm thrilled to host this series. During my time writing about fleet, I know how crucial it is to ensure the lessons learned by seasoned professionals continue to inform the future of our industry. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Rick Longobart. Rick, your career has been nothing short of legendary. Can you share a little bit about your journey in fleet and what's brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Lauren. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. It's a privilege to be part of the series of the learning segment. And as Kelly Reagan once said, and I think at the last GFX conference, I guess I'm one of the old farts, right, as he alluded to. So pleasure to be here. I hope that this helps other new people entering into the fleet world some insight as to our transition and our journey along the way.
Well, I like to refer to you guys as legends, is how I kind of like to look at it.
I,
But, in reflecting back on your career so far, what are some of the most significant changes that you've really seen in the fleet management industry?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, right? And pondering that in preparation of this interview, in the past, I think the fleet industry, especially in the government sector, has certainly changed, right? And in the old days, fleet operations kind of lived in a silo, right? I mean, we did what we needed to do. We worked on the vehicles that we needed to. We got them done. We got them back on the road. But we didn't really look at our surroundings and currently what we did and how it impacted the government sector. And the industry has certainly changed just because it's required of the constituents within the community to be more transparent and to share more of what we do, how we do it, and making sure that we're using taxpayer dollars to our best benefit. So, we're good stewards of the dollars that we spend and the work that we do. And it's important for us to broadcast that information because there's more eyes on what we do on a daily basis. And we need to make sure that we raise the flag and make sure we're recognized. And we're not necessarily what we might refer to as on the other side of the tracks, right? We're part of the core foundation of most operations within a large complex city in order to provide them the means of transportation, reliable vehicles for those operations to be successful. And without us, obviously, the wheels don't move and things don't get done. So it's important for us to make sure that we are sharing the knowledge and what we do from both our constituents and from our stakeholders within our organization. And that's the probably the biggest thing that has certainly changed is that we need to be able to share our successes and what we do and how we do it and be transparent to the public and to obviously the city administration.
Don't be afraid to promote yourself for sure. Make sure people see the good that you're doing.
Yep. Do not be afraid to brag, right? Because if you don't, no one will do it for you.
Well, in that same kind of line of thought, can you talk about a memorable experience or a challenge that you faced and how you overcame it and were able to kind of promote yourself and your fleet in that tact?
Yeah, well, I will say this much, right? There's not a particular instance in which I recall where there's been a major challenge which we had to overcome, or me from a personal perspective. I would say probably the biggest challenge that I've recognized and had to overcome is to be able to admit when you're wrong, even though you think you're right, right? And that's something that I think I've kind of evolved and kind of grown as a human being as well as a fleet manager in this industry is to recognize the fact that there's two sides to every story, and what you think is right for the customer is not necessarily what they think is right for themselves, and there's got to be some type of communication, open dialogue, and being able to listen. And I think in my early career path is that it was more dogmatic hey, my way and the highway, and that's there's no other there's no other ways of obviously skinning a cat. So, now as I aged throughout my career, I've taken a different look at it. Is that let's look at someone else's perspective and how does that impact them? And even though you might think that's the right approach, you have to also look at their lens and how they operate in order to make a win-win situation if you're wanting to implement a program or be successful and launch a program is how it's going to affect them at the end of the day. And if you don't look at both sides of the equation, then oftentimes then it's not a win-win situation, it's a lose-win.
It reminds me of an image that I've seen several times floating through social media that shows some circles from a few different points of view and how all of those points of view are the truth. It really depends on how you were looking at that circles or the situation. And so I think that really kind of was what popped into my head as you were talking about that was that picture of you've got to remember your view might be right, but somebody else might be as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely correct.
So, you've mentioned a few lessons so far, but I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. Are there any other really important lessons that you've learned in your time in fleet management that you think are really crucial for new fleet managers to understand?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is don't be an idiot, right? And I think I probably fell in that category many times, right? Is that hey, I'm the fleet manager and this is how we'll run the operation. And I've learned through as I've aged through my career is to better understand, get input from others, listen to others, and try to develop a team that works best for a cohesive work environment. And I'll use the cliche, and I've said this before in many presentations, is that and I always cringe at the fact that sometimes I hear in meetings that it's my department or it's my operation or it's our my fleet management operation. And I pride myself on not using that terminology. Is I like to pride myself on whenever we're making presentations that it's our fleet operation, it's our fleet management operation. It's never mine because there's no ownership in government, right? And I don't own anything, right? I'm just here to steer the ship and give direction and hopefully give experience and intellectual knowledge to those that can grow into a position and not to look at it as mine because there is no mine in government and there is no I in team, but there is certainly one is stupid, right? And so it's a cohesive work environment, and I'm at a point where I'm not afraid to teach others as to what I know, and hopefully they'll grow into that, and that's what you want, right? You want to hire people that are smarter than you to help advance the cause, and in my case, that's not hard to do. So you really you really want to find people that can really carry the water and help you do your job and don't be afraid of people that want to grow into your position. I encourage that, right? That's what you want is you want to create a legacy where people can reside in that position when the time is right and they can advance the cause and don't be afraid to share that information. That's what you want. You want people to grow within an organization.
It reminds me of another idiom that I heard not too long ago and kind of was looking at, if you're ranking your potential new hires on a scale of 1 to 10 and you kind of look at yourself on that scale that sevens hire fives and sixes, but eights hire nines and tens. And it took me a while to kind of wrap my head around that. But the more and more I thought about it, it was exactly what you're saying. Look for those people who are better than you, who are going to improve and grow and do better than what we've been able to do in our roles. And I think that's very, very important to look for.
Yeah, no one wants to be stagnant in a career, right? So if you give a person an opportunity to do something that's new, that's fresh, that's exciting, oftentimes they're going to accept that challenge and they're going to want to try something different. They don't. No one wants to come to work and do the same thing over and over, right? And, we struggle a little bit in the government sector with pay. Uh, we compete with the private industry, where our pay scales are slightly lower. But we offset those with some great benefits and opportunities working in the government sector. But still, having said all that, is there's still that prize, and that prize is oftentimes not pay sometimes work environment. But for the most part, it's really recognition and giving them an opportunity to grow in their career and going home at the end of the day and saying, wow, I'm really proud of the changes that I've made within our organization and feel good about that. And it has to be kind of a work-life balance, right? No one wants to work 12 hours a day and then go home and ponder of what they didn't and did should have done, right? They want to be able to go home, share that information with their family, feel really good about what they did during the day, and come back and be energized and excited about doing something different at the workplace, and then enjoying time with family and friends and loved ones, right? It shouldn't be all about work. So, and maybe that's just me growing older, but I think there has to be a work-life balance in any organization.
No, a mentor once told me when I was having a rough time and I needed some time off of work, and they looked at me and they said, you know, what are you going to remember the day you missed at work or this life event that you'd be missing? And I think I know the answer to that. And I think it was really, really helpful for me as a younger employee to be able to find that work life balance and to understand that my job is very, very valuable and it needs to be respected. But at the same time, if I'm not the best that I can be, I'm not going to give the company the best either. So I think it's very, very important to understand that early on. I think
Absolutely.
with this kind of a concept, if you could go back in time, what's one thing you wish you would have known when you first started out in Fleet?
Yeah, that's a tough question, right? I mean, I think in my early career it was, hey, let's be, I want to be successful. I want to accomplish certain things. Um, I really wanted to make a certain career path at a certain age, and I think I've succeeded in that. But what I didn't recognize is all the things I needed to do and people that I stepped on, unfortunately, and probably hurt along the way. And I'm just being candid to get to that space, right? Is that you don't realize the impact that you have on people's lives, and as I get into my last journey of my fleet management career and obviously focus 100% on consulting, which I've done for the last 11 years. It's really about giving people opportunity to grow and to help them mentor into those spaces. And I don't know that I did such a great job as a young fleet manager to help others advance. It was more about Rick Longobart than it was about helping others to advance in their career. And I think that's one of the things that I recognize that I probably didn't do a good job as I could have. And I kind of regret that at times. I sometimes ponder about some of the arguments and some of the discussions I've had with others and said, wow, was that really worth it? Right. But I also recognize the fact that we've also grown as young adults and prospered to the more journey perspective that we're in today. And that certainly helped me share that with others and hope that they'll learn from it rather than stumble through it like I probably did and on many others.
Well, it's conversations like we're having today that will continue to help you share the wisdom and knowledge with folks and help you continue to grow. I love it. Um, Continuing with that kind of newer fleet manager angle, what are maybe some rookie mistakes that you might see new fleet managers make that you could kind of help advise them to steer clear of?
Yeah, one of the things that I think most fleet managers fail to look at is that there's a couple things that you need to do. Is one is when you come to the workplace, people, at least this is what I've experienced, is that energy helps get people engaged, right? No one wants to come to work with a low energy environment. So crazy as it may sound, and crazy as maybe some people may think I am, I like to come to work with some energy and some laughter and put smiles on people's faces and get them thinking, right? And even if they're crazy ideas, right, throw things out there, kind of throw the spaghetti to the wall, right? And come up with ideas and let people start doing some brainstorming. Have meetings and think about ideas that really will make you a successful organization and allow other people to engage in those conversations. Bring in people, from the boots on the ground, the technicians that are not always at the place in which they can suggest ideas, get them into meetings, right? And so I like to bring high energy and making sure that people are happy with what they're doing and also recognize that I see what they're doing. And so bringing in a high energy environment encourages people to speak out and come up with ideas, and even if they don't work, right? The old cliche: if you're not failing, you're not trying. So hey, if you want to try a project and you want to lead it and you fail, so what? Break it and we'll fix it, right? It's not the end of the world. So those are some of the things that I think new fleet managers need to understand, is that giving new people in your organization, or even old journey people in your organization, absolutely a time to shine, right? Give them a chance to get out there and do something different. Go to trade shows, go to conferences, go to city council meetings, bring them to meetings in which maybe they don't have a part of a director's meeting, or city manager meeting. Get them out there so they can better understand. We've recently had some technicians attend some conferences, and they were just blown away. It was like, wow, this is really great information. And I live in this fishbowl, and I never really get to see what the outside world looks like. All I know is I turn wrenches and I fix vehicles, and some are very complex, but I don't get to see outside of that world. And so, what fleet managers need to understand or new fleet managers need to understand, is that give your technicians and everybody within your organization to see what the outside world looks like.
I love it. I love it. So, thinking about what's worked well and what practices or innovations you've really found to be the most effective, what have you found to be top for managing a successful fleet?
Well, I think I'm going to probably regurgitate what I just said, right? And that is, meet with people, come up with ideas, be creative, don't keep anything off the table, listen to others, allow people to communicate, come up with ideas of their own. And we just had recent conversations with some of our technicians and some of the challenges that they're having, with promotions and understanding, just as a trivial thing as fleet manager, not fleet manager of the year, but employee of the year, right? We also have an employee of the month, right? And how do we come through that selection process, and hearing what their thoughts are helps us transition and smooth out some of those ways of identifying and coming up with a methodology that works best for them. And so I think I've answered this question to a prior question, but just listening to others, right, and hearing what their perspectives are certainly makes a big difference in the workplace.
And I think, technology, we've seen that change, I think, daily. We just had the Consumer Electronics Show with some incredible advanced technology that's been coming out. It's definitely changing fleet management. What advancements have really been the most game changing for you? And is there anything you're kind of excited about seeing grow as the future comes?
Yeah, and technology is growing faster than we can keep up with it, right? Let's face it, right? There's a couple things that come to mind that I think I'm really excited about. One that I think we all probably know and love and probably have used, in the industry, and that is telematics, right? I mean, telematics has changed the future. I always refer to it when I'm either making a presentation or talking about it, is I kind of look at as telematics as kind of the approach that years ago you used to have to justify for a cell phone, right? And you have to explain to administration why you needed a cell phone. You needed it for contacts or making phone calls or calendar, updates, and you had to really struggle about communicating and what you needed it for. And as time evolved and technology caught up, you realize that you didn't need to ask for a cell phone. It was almost a required component to do your job, right? You're handed the phone the day you walked into the new employment. I see telematics kind of the same way. Early champions, early adopters, you'd have to justify what telematics would do for your organization. And now you see telematics as, how did you ever live without it, right? I mean, it used to be early pioneers is, where was my vehicle? How fast was it going? But today's industry with anti-idling and EV transition, and motor pool and fuel consumption and PM compliance and everything else that goes along with telematics. It's no longer where are you at, where have I been, and how fast have I gone. It offers so many other technical attributes to managing a fleet that I don't know how anybody can really operate without it. It's just really one of the biggest game changers probably in the industry. And second to that, is something that kind of a little more trivial, right? And that is virtual meetings, right? And I know that seems odd, right?
Hmm.
But think about it. I mean, I'm in meetings probably out of the 8 hours a day, right? And most of those are on Teams or Zoom or whatever platform you prefer to use. Is that's how we communicate now? We chat through virtual meetings. We meet during virtual meetings. We all look like the Brady Bunch, but we get a lot done. If you remember the days you got in the car and you drove to one meeting to the next, or you walked down the hallway, um, you have more meetings, you have less time to get stuff done from a personal perspective, mini breaks and lunches and other things I won't mention during this interview. But you can get a heck of a lot more done because you can literally meet virtual and bring people into the calls where you couldn't do that during in-person meetings. And so while that seems odd, um, the virtual platform really has changed the way we do business, both in government and in the private space. And then the last thing I'll end with that I think is really exciting, and I think probably this has probably been said by other interviews, is that I'm really excited about the EV transition. I know it's not an easy thing to do. Uh, we've been really successful in Raleigh, and in other parts of the world, that country states that I've worked in. But this is really going to be a game changer. And I know it's difficult. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of technology that needs to be developed and adopted. And it's a high cost transition. But think about what it's going to do to the workplace, what the technical attributes that are going to be required. We've gone from the grease monkey to the technician, from the technicians, it really is going to be an IT person. Uh, Repairing vehicles. And that's going to really, I think, change the industry because we've struggled for many years finding qualified technicians that are available out in the industry. And I think every organization across the country struggles with this, finding qualified technicians, because sometimes it pays more to sit behind a desk with fingers on keyboards than it does underneath the over a fender well, underneath the hood, fixing a vehicle where it's heavy, it's hot, you get dirty. It's a difficult task to overcome. And sometimes it's difficult to compete in the IT world to find technicians. But I see that paradigm swing, I should say, changing, because what you're going to be getting is IT professionals that are going to be diagnosing vehicles through tablets and other web-enabled devices rather than a wrench in their hand. They're going to have a laptop in their hand, and I think that's going to change the platform of what we hire, in the not too distant future. So that's going to be a real exciting transition. Not to mention what it does for the environment, and climate change.
And I think earlier you mentioned that, Fleet very much started siloed, not really working with other departments. And as time has gone along, it's become much more of a part of the company, very integral. And I think that electrification, aside from vehicles, is also creating a new connection in infrastructure and facilities and ways that Fleet hadn't been necessarily working with as much before. And so I think there's even more growth in the Fleet function and who they're working with and how they need to work with them, and benefits, because those people are going to bring new insights, new information, and abilities, I think. So I think it's really interesting to see how much that is also impacting other parts of the company and Fleet as well.
Yeah, Lauren, and thanks for bringing that up because that's true, right? I mean, when we make presentations about EV transition, the first thing that usually comes out of my mouth is that it's no longer the same environment that you were accustomed to working in before, where you could launch a certain technology or you can build a certain infrastructure, and you can literally do that from a fleet perspective. But in the EV world, that doesn't hold true anymore. If you think about all the players that you need in order to successfully launch an EV transition plan, you have to have the fleet. You need to have obviously the stakeholders, so they're trained behind the wheel, right? You need technicians, so they're trained underneath the hood. You need to bring in facilities because they're going to help you with the EV infrastructure, and that's not something you're going to do because of the high voltage and the construction of putting in infrastructure, right? You need IT because usually those chargers are going to communicate to some type of software, so who's charging, when they charge, kilowatt hour charge, obviously enable, disable, is my charger available, the cost of charge. So it's an IT technical perspective. And then you need obviously human resources because they want to know are you training your technicians? Are you training the drivers? Right. And then you also need to bring in utilities, right? Because utilities are really the caveat of being successful or not, because if there's not enough power to obviously energize those chargers, then you can't put in infrastructure. So not only are you working with other inner departments in a company perspective, but you also need to work with external players as well, such as utilities and others, and even colleges and trade tech centers, because they need to be able to train your technicians. So it really opens up the corridor to working with outside of your organization and within.
I love it.
And I think I'm just rambling at this point. So
No, no, this is great. And I think, this is the information that people really need to be hearing and understanding. There is so much growth. We pretty much answered my next question, really looking at some changes and challenges that are really happening in the future. But kind of closing things out, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to new entrants coming into the fleet industry today?
I would say my biggest advice is don't be afraid. Right? Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Learn from others, share with others. Join associations, go to trade shows, talk to your nearby agency, or if you're a private company, other agencies that are doing something similar to you. Don't be afraid of making a mistake. Right? I mean, this is how you learn. This is how I've learned. If I could get $1 for every mistake I made, I'd be a millionaire, so to speak. But it's okay to make mistakes. It's all right. That's how we learn. And so get out there, try new things. Don't be afraid, um, and just be open, be candid, clear communication. Listen to others because they can help you guide you along the way.
Rick, I could talk to you all day long. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your journey and your insights with us today.
You're very welcome. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope this helps and look forward to talking to others along the way as well. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Well, thank you. It's conversations like these that remind us why preserving and passing down this knowledge is so critical for the future of fleet. To everyone watching, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What stood out to you? Who should we spotlight in future episodes of our Fleet Legends series? Drop your comments below and join the conversation. And don't forget, there's more wisdom and inspiration coming your way soon, so stay tuned.